There's something that I've observed throughout my life, actually, being a part of church, going to church, listening to sermons and discussions. You see it now there. It's the same thing. It still is happening. I experience so much. And that is discussion and talk about what other people, what they believe, what they're doing that's wrong. Especially, well, the church down the road, they teach this and they're wrong. And it's done with specific people. Well, this teacher, this pastor, this preacher, he is wrong. He's a false teacher. He's doing this. He says this, and that's not true. That's not right. And there are those that, for whatever reasons, that they make their living off of telling you what others are doing wrong. And it happens, good-naturedly, well-meaning, I'm sure, but want to talk about, well, that's what so-and-so believes. That's what that denomination believes. Those people in that church, they teach this, they learn, they believe this. There's a problem with that. And one of the problems is when we try to identify what someone's doing wrong, we're actually trying to say, I am right and you are wrong. And we put people into categories of right and wrong. And this is something that it's a very religious practice. It's a political practice. It's the same kind of thing where people can be categorized right or wrong. And it's not really helpful. Now, there's a lot of assumptions that go into a lot of this. There are those that think that they have a job to protect you and me from false teachers, from those that are teaching improperly or incorrectly. And so they mean well, but they're still setting it up as that person or those people are wrong. I and those I identify with are right. And I want us to look and see, what does God have to say about this? What does the Bible teach? What does the Word say? And one of the places we can go to and we can look at for the principle here is in Romans 14. Paul has a discussion about some that eat meat and some that don't. And so he starts out this chapter, and we're going to specifically look at verse 4, but he starts out this chapter and he says, receive one who's weak in the faith. And so when we think weak in the faith, all that has to mean is somebody who has a different perspective of you, one that you would think is even wrong. He says to receive this person. What does that mean? That means to not to shun, not to push away, not to just to say you're wrong. As he goes on in verse 1, he says, receive one who is weak in the faith, but not to disputes over doubtful things. What is that? What it actually means from the Greek is not to discussions that are very judgmental in nature. What's the point of that? You're trying to say, I'm right and you're wrong. And he says, don't do it. It's not the way. See, we're going to get to verse 4. In fact, we're going to jump right into verse 4 and we're going to read that. And we're going to see this in the context of God as our Father, an individual personal relationship, Holy Spirit guiding, leading you into understanding and all truth. Okay, so verse 4, this is the specific one. He says, who are you to judge another servant? Who are you to judge somebody who works for somebody else? It's not your job. He says, to his own master he stands or falls. And indeed, he will be made to stand, for God is able to make him stand. So the point here, he says, who are you to be judging another person's servant and say, you're doing it all wrong, which in essence is saying to God, you are doing it wrong. Because if this is somebody who is seeking him and seeking to have that relationship, that intimacy that we've talked about, who are you to say you're doing it wrong? The thing actually to say is to trust God to take his own children and bring them to maturity. We're going to look at the parable of the prodigal son on Friday's video. But there are some of the same lessons that we can draw out of that. Who are you to be judging another servant, someone who is responsible not to you, but to God? And to enter into this discussion, into this judgmental thing, is not helpful, because you're saying, God, you're doing it wrong. This is about trusting in the relationship instead of saying you're doing it wrong and trying to fix what somebody's believing, is to connect them, to encourage them in that intimacy, the connection with and knowing God. It's in that relationship. He is the one. He says it here. Paul says he will make them to stand. He brings the understanding and the clarity. Yes, we can say things, but it's not in a judgmental way. And it's not about having a discussion about, well, this is wrong and this is right. Obviously, I'm right and you're wrong kind of discussion. Those aren't beneficial. It doesn't help. Know where you stand with him. Be connected to him. He is able and he is faithful to guide and direct and lead you into complete understanding and truth. He is. And that's trusting him in his grace. And that's where you and I need to be.